Isa Diop, a black woman in her 30s, walks slowly through the aisles of a luxurious shopping mall, her slender figure contrasting with the surrounding wealth. Wearing a simple cotton dress, she barely attracts attention, her modest appearance standing in stark contrast to the opulence around her. Her gaze is attentive, scrutinizing every detail, every corner of the mall. No one, not even the most experienced employees, could guess that she is actually the new owner of this place. Her father, a determined immigrant who built this mall through hard work, always instilled in her a fundamental rule: appearances are deceiving. Never let your success define you. This phrase still echoes in her mind as she recalls her childhood, marked by her father's sacrifices and the many lessons in humility he taught her. From a young age, she learned to observe the world with reserve, never allowing vanity to guide her, and to understand that a person's appearance should never be confused with their true worth. Thus, today, as the owner of this mall, she chooses to walk around incognito. Far from seeking recognition or asserting her authority, she wants to deeply understand the needs of the employees and customers, observe the social dynamics that animate this place. The aisles are lined with luxurious stores, sparkling windows, and high-end products, but Isa is not impressed. On the contrary, she inspects everything, from the expressions of the salespeople to the gestures of the customers, passing by the general atmosphere of the mall. She walks slowly, without hurrying, as if she were simply an ordinary shopper looking for a good deal. Her gaze scans each shop, every detail, while remaining alert, attentive. But suddenly, she is interrupted by a security guard, a tall man with a hard face and imposing appearance. He looks her up and down with suspicion, his eyes fixed on her as if she were an intruder. "What are you looking for here?" he asks in a harsh voice. "This mall is for wealthy people. I've seen you hanging around here for quite some time, and you don't seem to know what you want." Isa remains calm, a slight smile on her face. She immediately understands the nature of his judgment. He looks at her, and beyond her appearance, he only sees a black woman in modest attire who has no place in this luxury shopping center. But rather than revealing herself or reacting defensively, she chooses to play along. "Why do you think I don't belong here?" she asks gently, her voice almost soothing, as if posing an innocent question. The guard, a bit taken aback by her serenity, but still confident, responds in a more condescending tone. "This kind of place isn't for everyone," he says, shrugging. "You don't look like our usual customers. This mall is for people with a certain standing." Isa, unfazed, shows no visible reaction. Instead, she approaches a display window where a blue silk dress catches her attention. She delicately takes it in her hands, inspecting the fabric while discreetly observing the reactions of passers-by, employees, and the guard, who continues to stare at her. The luxury around her, the designer clothes, the sparkling accessories, does not impress her. What truly interests her are the attitudes, the underlying judgments, and the social dynamics that unfold in such places. It is a field of observation, not a place for consumption for her. "Can I help you with something?" the guard asks, this time with a politeness that seems forced, as if he feels compelled to appear courteous while maintaining constant vigilance. Isa smiles softly, her expression calm. She gently places the dress back on its hanger. "I'm just looking." "Thank you," she says, her voice gentle but firm. The guard, visibly uncomfortable with this response, squints and retorts in a harsher tone, as if to reaffirm his authority. "Of course, but please be careful. These dresses are quite expensive and delicate. We wouldn't want you to damage anything. Do you understand?" Isa, with a slightly raised eyebrow, immediately perceives the condescension in his tone, but she remains perfectly calm. "I understand perfectly, don't worry," she replies, a faint smile still on her lips. She knows that this guard's attitude speaks volumes about the atmosphere of this mall: constant vigilance, quick judgment based on appearances. She recalls her father's teachings, patience and discretion as powerful weapons in a world where people are too often judged by superficial criteria. The guard, insistent in his role as the enforcer, continues to follow her closely. He doesn't take his eyes off her as she moves towards the jewelry section, her steps slow and measured. Isa gently touches the bracelet studded with precious stones, her sharp gaze observing everything around her. The quality of the products, the service from the employees, but also the behavior of the customers. Every detail counts in this discreet analysis she is conducting. The guard, arms crossed, stands at a distance that feels reassuring to him, watching Isa like a predator waiting for the right moment to intervene. She knows it. He's waiting for her to make a wrong move, to show a sign of weakness, but she does not let herself be intimidated. Not once. She knows that this mall, filled with luxury and opulence, is merely a facade. What lies beneath, the true dynamics of the place, are hidden in the human interactions, the hasty judgments, and the small power plays. And that is what she has come to observe, to understand, and eventually change, so that this place and her image can also become a symbol of inclusivity, respect, and dignity for all, regardless of their appearance or status. These are made of real gold and diamonds, he says almost as a warning, his voice tinged with authority. And they cost over $20,000 each. The guard seemed to want to highlight a distinction, as if emphasizing the gap between her and the precious items he was presenting, in an attempt to reinforce an invisible hierarchy. Isa, unshaken, simply replied, "They are beautiful. Gold and diamonds are truly lovely." Her words, simple but sincere, seemed to slide off him, not affecting him, as she continued to observe the jewelry with measured curiosity. The security guard, unable to resist trying to regain control of the situation, stepped forward abruptly, partially blocking her view, as if to signal that his role as a guardian was much more than just physical surveillance. It was a matter of power. "Perhaps you would be interested in something from the sales section," he suggested in an almost casual tone, as though directing her to a more accessible section was a service he was offering. Isa, still calm and resolute in her observation, gave him a subtle smile. "Thank you, but I prefer to continue exploring. Your sales section might interest me later," she responded. Her answer was not dismissive but clearly determined, a simple gesture of refusal that unsettled the guard. He seemed perplexed for a moment, his gaze fixed on her with silent insistence, but he did not break his stare. The other employees in the mall, discreet but attentive, had already begun to watch the scene unfold. They exchanged furtive glances, sensing the awkward atmosphere building around Isa. None of them dared intervene, all too aware of the unspoken rules that governed this world of luxury and prestige. Their silence was heavy, palpable, and the agitation it created was noticeable, as if an unease had settled in, though no one dared acknowledge it openly. Isa, for her part, remained focused on her objective. Her aim was not to provoke or draw attention, but to understand how this place she now owned operated. This shopping center, designed to embody wealth and social superiority, was, in reality, just a facade. She wanted to see how people like her, those who appeared modest, were treated in this world where money and status dictated behavior. As she reached out to touch a delicately displayed pearl necklace, the guard abruptly interrupted her, positioning himself next to her in an almost theatrical gesture. "Excuse me, madam, but I must really ask you not to touch or approach the items unless you intend to purchase," he said in a dry, almost cutting voice. A few customers stopped, intrigued by the exchange now drawing attention. The situation, though seemingly trivial, had turned into a small public spectacle, and the looks turned towards her, whispers filling the air. Isa, showing no emotion on her face, slowly withdrew her hand, but her calm demeanor seemed to only exacerbate the guard's frustration. "I was just looking," she said, her voice soft but firm, an unwavering expression in her eyes. She felt no guilt but rather saw herself as an observer in this theater of judgments. "Maybe looking from a distance would be better," the guard insisted, his tone growing even more acerbic, almost as a reproach. "That way, there's no risk of damaging something you couldn't afford." He said these words with a sardonic smile, trying to assert his authority and remind the woman before him that she didn't belong in this world of luxury. Isa, momentarily reflecting on the humiliation beginning to seep into her skin, forced herself to stay calm. She felt the eyes of the customers weighing on her, a combination of curiosity, judgment, and even disdain hanging in the air. Some were drawn to the drama unfolding, others scrutinized her response with heightened attention. Shame tried to settle in, but she pushed it away firmly, recalling her father's words, "Never let appearances define who you are." This advice, a beacon in moments of doubt, gave her the strength not to be defeated by this treatment. She straightened slightly, lifted her chin, and in a calm but resolute tone, asked the question she had been contemplating for a while. "Do you treat all your customers this way?" Her words were simple, but they hit the guard like a blow. The question was direct, unambiguous, and seemed to challenge his entire approach. The guard, caught off guard, blinked, as if he hadn't anticipated such a sharp response from someone he considered beneath him. He stammered, trying to justify himself. I'm just doing my job. We have to protect our valuable items, you understand?" His voice trailed off in an awkward attempt to rationalize his actions. Isa, without missing a beat, threw him a light, almost indifferent smile. "Protect your items or judge your customers based on their appearance," she said, her voice now sharp as a blade. These words, spoken in a detached tone, resonated in the air, marking a turning point in the interaction. She knew that this question, though simple, carried immense weight. In an instant, she had shifted the power dynamic, forcing the guard to confront his own prejudices. This was not just about wealth or social status, but about dignity and respect, two values that no one could take from her, regardless of her appearance. The silence became almost tangible, the air thick with tension. The customers present in the store, who had been observing the scene with discreet curiosity, now seemed uncomfortable, frozen in their movements as if the situation had caught them off guard. The guard, realizing the magnitude of the mistake he had just made, swallowed nervously, perhaps realizing that he had underestimated the woman standing firmly before him. He turned in all directions, looking for an escape, but before he could respond or attempt to justify his behavior, a deep voice rose, breaking the tense atmosphere. "Isa?" The voice came from the back of the store. It was the general manager of the mall, a tall and distinguished man whose quick stride betrayed a sense of urgency. As he reached them, his face displayed a look of confusion and visible embarrassment at what he had just witnessed. He seemed torn between resolving the situation and the discomfort of seeing it unfold in such an unflattering light. "I'm sorry for this situation. There seems to have been a misunderstanding," he said, his words floating in the air, attempting to downplay the incident. The guard, still in shock, looked around, still not understanding what was happening. He asked, his tone filled with disbelief, "Wait, do you know her?" His eyes flickered between the two of them, not believing what he had just heard. He had expected her to be an ordinary customer, but this new information rattled him. The manager, clearly embarrassed by the situation, nodded slowly, and his gaze met Isa's with a note of regret in his eyes. "She's more than a customer. Isa Diop is the new owner of this shopping center," he finally announced, his voice tinged with humility, which contrasted with his embarrassment. The murmur that passed through the customers present was almost imperceptible at first, but it spread quickly as the faces around them lit up with surprise and recognition. It was clear that no one had imagined that this modest woman, dressed simply in a cotton dress, owned the entire place. The security guard's expression changed instantly. It went from condescension and arrogance to pure fear. He froze for a moment, his eyes widening as he realized the gravity of his mistake. He stammered, his voice almost strangled. I didn't know. I'm sorry, really?" He was profusely apologizing, but the words seemed empty, lacking sincerity. Isa stared at him for a moment, her piercing gaze devoid of any animosity. She was calm, far calmer than the guard would have thought possible. She took a slow breath before speaking, her voice calm yet firm. "This isn't about who I am. It's about respect. You judged without thinking, simply because I didn't fit your idea of what a wealthy customer should look like." Her words echoed in the air, each one carrying the weight of an important lesson, not just for the security guard, but for everyone around her. She then turned to the director, her gaze unwavering. "And this is exactly why I came incognito today." to understand what is wrong with the management of this place. She paused, observing the effect of her words, before continuing. This shopping center must be a place where everyone feels respected, no matter their appearance. Changes start today. Her statement was resolute, like a promise. She wasn't just there to test her employees' loyalty. She was there to transform the place and restore a sense of justice and equality. The guard tried once more to mumble an apology, but Isa, with a light yet authoritative gesture, raised her hand to stop him. "The only thing I expect to hear from you," she said, her voice now as sharp as a knife's edge, "is your resignation." The words landed in the room like a guillotine. She hadn't come to negotiate or seek compromises. She was there to establish clear principles. The guard froze. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his face sagged under the weight of realization. He knew, deep down, that he had lost. Even more so, he knew he deserved it. His gaze dropped, ashamed. None of the other employees dared intervene. The silence weighed heavily in the air, the atmosphere taut as a rope about to snap. The customers' eyes turned silently toward the scene unfolding before them, all hanging on Isa's every gesture and word. It was clear they were waiting to see how the situation would unfold, what kind of leader Isa Diop would be. Isa remained unyielding, her eyes steely. She scanned the faces of the employees, those who had watched the scene with a certain relief, perhaps recognizing in her actions a form of justice, a corrective act. Others, less comfortable with such confrontations, were beginning to understand that things were going to change. The status quo was no longer acceptable. The facade of luxury and distinction that had always been the pillar of this center was going to give way to something more human, more equitable. All eyes were now on her, and everyone understood that this was not just a reprimand, but a redefinition of values. Isa Diop was not just a new owner, she was a force for change. And that change was going to transform this shopping center into a place where dignity and respect would no longer depend on outward appearances, but on the heart and humanity of every individual. While the guard, pale-faced, gathered his belongings, his defeat written across his features, Isa Diop observed, her eyes fixed on him but her mind already focused on the future. She knew that what she had just experienced was only the beginning of a long and arduous journey. This shopping center, which she had just acquired, had to become much more than just a place of consumption. She saw it as fertile ground for profound transformation, a true symbol of inclusion and respect, where every customer, regardless of their status or appearance, could feel accepted. But for this transformation to take root, it was not enough to reform the internal procedures. She had to also touch the very essence of the mentalities and values that shaped the behavior of every employee. The eyes of all the employees were now fixed on her, a palpable tension in the air. Each one of them waited for her next words with almost religious attention, knowing that what was happening here would mark a decisive turning point. Isa knew this step was crucial to laying the foundation for what she called a cultural shift. She took a deep breath, her words coming with calm conviction but also unshakable determination. It's time to create an environment where every customer, no matter their appearance or status, feels welcome, she said, carefully weighing each word. I expect each of you to reconsider the way you interact with others. This center will no longer be a place where judgments are based on appearances, but a place where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. A murmur of approval spread through the room. Some employees, surprised but relieved, nodded timidly, while others remained silent, visibly moved by the power of her words. Isa scanned their faces, looking for signs of commitment, sparks of understanding. She knew the change wouldn't be instantaneous, but she had planted a seed today, a seed that, if nurtured properly, could grow into a strong and resilient tree capable of transforming the entire center. She wanted every employee to understand that they were responsible not only for their own behavior, but also for the impact it could have on others. She then turned to the general manager, who still seemed a bit uncomfortable under the pressure. We need to train all the staff on how we want customers to be treated from now on, Isa continued in a firm voice. This will not be negotiable. I want customer service and diversity training to be organized by next week. The director, still shaken by the exchange, nodded quickly, not even attempting to argue. Yes, of course, Isa. I'll take care of it immediately. He knew that no excuse would be acceptable now, and that the only option was to comply with the new directive she was imposing with natural authority. Isa turned on her heel without saying another word, her steps echoing in the space like a signal marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The silence that followed her departure was heavy, but paradoxically filled with hope. The shopping center, still vibrating with the energy of the confrontation, seemed suspended, awaiting what was to come. The employees, while continuing their tasks, couldn't help but reflect on what they had just experienced. Some seemed already relieved to see this judgmental attitude being challenged, while others, more concerned, understood that the transition to a more inclusive culture would require much more than passive adherence. But all, without exception, knew that things had changed. A new era had begun. The story of Isa Diop is not just that of a powerful woman asserting her authority, but also a mirror inviting us to reflect on the deep values we hold in our lives. She reminds us that true wealth is not measured by outward appearance, but by the way we treat others, by how we see those around us. Through her actions, Isa challenges the prejudices hidden behind facades of luxury, urging each of us to question our own stereotypes and how these stereotypes shape our interactions with others. This story pushes us to challenge our inherited conceptions and imagine a world where inclusion and respect are at the heart of our daily interactions. It is a call to action, to rise above the surface, beyond appearances, and recognize the dignity of every individual. Isa Diop, through her calm yet firm resistance to others' judgments, demonstrates that true power lies not only in wealth or social status, but in the ability to change mentalities and impose just values. She embodies the quiet strength of a silent revolution, yet one deeply powerful. A simple act of resistance, like the one she carried out that day, can be the catalyst for transformation. It is a clear signal that it is possible to redefine not only social structures, but also the mindsets that underpin them. Isa, through her determination and integrity, shows everyone that it is possible to create spaces where respect and inclusion are the guiding principles, not abstract concepts. She is a model of visionary leadership, not by imposing her will, but by setting an example for those around her and by the perseverance with which she defends what is right. The journey she has begun is far from over, but it is certain that the seeds she planted today will grow, and that this shopping center, under her leadership, will become a tangible symbol of inclusion and respect. And in a world where people too often judge others based on superficial criteria, Isa Diop reminds us that it is always possible to rewrite the rules.